What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue with our 2025 college football schedule preview and very early projected record series. The Wisconsin Badgers are up next. Before we look ahead to 2025, let's take a look back at what Wisconsin did in 2024. Here are my projections and predictions last year for Wisconsin. My projection for this team was 7-5, and then my prediction for them was 6-6. So I did have Wisconsin barely going to a bowl game just based off of how tough the schedule was last year in 2024. But the projection was pretty high for them, actually at 7-5. But that was just based off of last year. But yeah, Wisconsin, though, coming off a disappointing year, 5-7 in 2024. A lot of people think this was a disappointing year for them, but I really think it had something to do with the schedule for Wisconsin. And again, that's why I predicted them to go 6-6. You look at this schedule from last year in 2024, and looking at the non-conference, they played Western Michigan, South Dakota, and Alabama, of course, out of the SEC. And if you look back to that Alabama game, it was not even a close game at all. And because of the reason of that, I think after that first drive and everything, and then after Tyler Van Dyke got hurt at quarterback, I think that really just cost him that game. So yeah, the non-conference schedule wasn't tough, but having Alabama on there was a different story. And then looking at their games in the Big Ten, you look at who they played at home last year. They played Purdue, Penn State, Oregon, and Minnesota. So they ended up beating Purdue, but they only won one game last year in the Big Ten at home, and that was against one of the worst teams in the Big Ten in Purdue. But yeah, Penn State, Oregon, and Minnesota, those were pretty tough games for them. The Penn State game was a little bit close, but it really wasn't all that close at the end of it. And then Oregon, obviously, they gave them some problems. Nonetheless, Oregon still won that game by 3. So yeah, pretty tough home schedule last year for Wisconsin, and then on the road, they played at USC, at Rutgers, at Northwestern, at Iowa, and then on the road at Nebraska. So a pretty tough road schedule for them. They got a couple of wins, though, on the road at Rutgers and Northwestern. Those are two solid wins, but this is a Wisconsin team that, got off to a 5-2 start in the first half of the year, and then that 5-game stretch there from October 26th to November 30th. They lost 5 games in a row. That's where the schedule got even tougher for them, and I think that's the reason why this team went 5-7. So a disappointing year for Wisconsin in 2024. Can they turn things around in 2025? Well, looking at the schedule, though, it's a lot tougher compared to last year, in my opinion. Before we go game by game, let's take a look at who their non-conference opponents will be. So this is their non-conference schedule. They will play Miami of Ohio University Redhawks out of the MAC. Get to them in just a moment. And then, of course, Middle Tennessee. And I wouldn't really say these are two cupcake games here for Wisconsin. Maybe Middle Tennessee is, but Miami of Ohio University Redhawks is not. And then they, of course, play Alabama again, but this time they will play them on the road. So the non-conference schedule pretty similar to last year, except, Miami of Ohio University is not really a cupcake game, in my opinion. That was a team that was really one of the top teams in the MAC last year. So that's not really a guaranteed and not like a blowout win for Wisconsin, in my opinion. They'll still be big favorites, but how much by will they be favored in? That's going to be the question there. But yeah, Middle Tennessee, that's probably going to be an easy game there. And then obviously Alabama playing them in Tuscaloosa. That is a very tough place to play, and especially playing an SEC team in the non-conference. So that's your non-conference schedule. Let's now take a look at their home games in the Big Ten. They will play Maryland, Iowa, Ohio State, Washington, and Illinois. So not a bad home schedule here for Wisconsin, but Ohio State will be tough, and then same thing with Illinois. And you're probably wondering, why is Illinois going to be tough? Well, Illinois was actually pretty good last year, and they do have a lot of hype coming up in 2025. This could be a top 25 team, so definitely keep an eye out for Illinois. But Washington and Maryland, those are winnable games there for the Badgers, and then Iowa, probably a game where, Wisconsin could be an underdog, but they do definitely have a chance to win that game. So, again, the home schedule is not too bad for them for 2025. Let's now take a look at their away schedule. They will play on the road at Michigan, at Oregon, at Indiana, and then Minnesota. So a little bit of a tough road schedule here. You got Michigan and Oregon both on the road. Those are two tough places to play. Indiana, of course, will be a little bit of a trap game there for Wisconsin. You know, I'm not saying that Indiana is more talented than Wisconsin is. I mean, I just think playing on the road at Indiana is going to be a little bit tough because of what Indiana did last year as a very surprise team. And then Minnesota, that's pretty much an even matchup, it seems like, every year. Last year's game, though, was not really close. And this is a well-coached Minnesota team. So the away schedule for Wisconsin, a little bit tough for them in 2025. Let's now go back to the schedule and go full game by game now for the Badgers. They will open things up on Thursday against Miami of Ohio University Redhawks on August 28th. And like I mentioned, that game is not going to be easy for them. Then they got Middle Tennessee at home on September the 6th. Then they go on the road to face Alabama on September 13th. So 3 non-conference games to kick off the year. And then they play Maryland at home on September 20th to open up Big Ten play. They get a bye week before playing Michigan on the road on October the 4th. Then they come back at home to play Iowa on October the 11th. Then there's that big game against Ohio State on October 18th. And then they got Oregon on the road on October 25th after that. So how about that? Ohio State and Oregon in back-to-back weeks, one of them at home and then one on the road. And then they get a bye week right after that Oregon game before playing Washington on November 8th. Then it's back on the road to play Indiana on November 15th. Illinois at home on November 22nd, and then they'll close things out on the road at Minnesota on November 29th. So this is a very tough schedule for Wisconsin. Again, I think it's a lot tougher compared to last year's schedule. It's pretty similar, but you got new teams in the Big Ten that they're playing. Again, Alabama, though, in the non-conference, Michigan and Oregon both on the road. Those are probably going to be the toughest road games in the Big Ten for Wisconsin. And then obviously Iowa and Ohio State, those are two big games for them at home. But yeah, no back-to-back road games, which is good news. But look at that stretch there from October 4th to October 25th. You got Michigan, Iowa, Ohio State, and Oregon in 4 weeks straight. No bye weeks in between these in these games either. So yeah, that's the toughest part of the schedule in my opinion for Wisconsin. But let's now get a projection here for 2025. This is the scale I'll be using for their official projection. Basically a 1% game in the red, that's going to be pretty much counted as an automatic loss, and then your 20% games in the orange, that's where Wisconsin will be about a double-digit underdog. 40% in the yellow, that's where they'll be about a clear underdog by 6 or 7 points. So about less than a touchdown, somewhere in that particular range. And then your 50-50 games, those will stay in the white. Games that really could go either way. And then 60% in the purple, that's where they'll be favored by less than a touchdown, 6 or 7, so just like the yellow games. And then the blue games are pretty much just like the orange, where they'll be favored by double digits. And then the green games are like the red games. That's where they'll have their automatic wins. So we'll start with the easy wins here for Wisconsin. You got 2 of them on here. You got Miami of Ohio University Redhawks and then Middle Tennessee. And like I mentioned, I don't think the Redhawks are going to be an easy task here for Wisconsin. I think that's a team that you've got to keep an eye on here for Wisconsin. Again, this was a really good team last year in the MAC. They were one of the top teams in the MAC. Now, they may not be as good as they were last year. You never know about these group of 5 teams, but experience really does matter here for the group of 5 teams. And I know some group of 5 teams, they can pull off some upsets here, so maybe it wouldn't be a shock here if Wisconsin did lose this game. It's on a weeknight as well. Kind of tough to prepare for those weeknight games, but it is week 1. Teams are definitely not better by this time either. So yeah, they will play them on August 28th on that Thursday, and I would definitely say that game is at that 90 to 94% range. Middle Tennessee probably, over that 95 to 99% range. Maybe that's an easy game there for Wisconsin, but you never know about these group of 5 teams. They can definitely come out of nowhere, and they can pull off some upsets. So those are your 2 easy wins for Wisconsin, but you look at the rest of the schedule, there's not any other guaranteed wins, and also any games where you can favor Wisconsin by double digits and then by 6 or 7 points. So we go to the other side where they're going to be underdogs. I don't have any games in the red, but I do have a few games here in the orange. Those 3 games, Alabama, Oregon, and Indiana. These 3 games are on the road. Those are really tough places to play. I wouldn't say Indiana's a tough place to play. I mean, they can absolutely win that game, but just based off of last year, year. That's why Indiana is in the orange. And then Oregon and Alabama, those are going to be tough games for Wisconsin to win. And I know they beat, I know they lost to Oregon last year by 3. It should be in the yellow, but that's not really what this is based off of. It's just based off of how the teams finished last year. And then obviously Alabama is going to be a tough game to play on the road as well. So yeah, these 3 games right here, Wisconsin will be double-digit underdogs in all 3 of them. And then I got 3 games here in the yellow as well, where I think they'll be about 6 or 7 point underdogs. You got Michigan, Ohio State, and Illinois. These 3 games, Wisconsin will have a pretty big chance in all 3 of them. They'll have a bigger chance against Ohio State and Illinois. Those are potential like upset alert games there that Wisconsin can win. But Michigan's going to be pretty tough. Michigan on the road, that's a pretty tough place to play. And Michigan definitely possibly a top 25 team. Ohio State is going to be like a top 10 team. Ohio State won't be as good as they were last year, but they'll still have some talent. I mean, they're still going to be favored nonetheless. And then Illinois, I was really close to putting Illinois as a 50-50 game. And when I did the Illinois' projection back then, I meant to switch this game into a purple game for Illinois. So this game is now in the purple for Illinois. It's now in the yellow here for Wisconsin. I don't think it's a 50-50 game as of right now, just based off of how the teams finished from last year. So yeah, these 3 games, I think Wisconsin will be 6 or 7 point underdogs in all 3 of them. And then that's going to leave you with 4 50-50 games. Maryland, Iowa, Washington, and Minnesota. These are all games that really could go either way. This really could decide Wisconsin's season. They probably have to win at least 3 of them in order to make it to a bowl game. Again, Minnesota will be pretty tough because it's on the road, but that's a game they can absolutely win. Washington was a pretty solid team. They can win that game. Iowa might be a slightly more talented team than the Badgers are, but that's a game they can also win. And then Maryland absolutely can win that game as well. So these 4 games are all 50-50 games that can go either way. So what does the projected record come out to be here for Wisconsin for 2025? Well, we count the 2 green games as wins, and then you count the 3 orange games as losses, and then you average out these 3 games in the yellow at 40%, average out the 50-50 games at 50%, and odds would say they probably win 2 out of the 4 50-50 games here in this, formula. So I think they probably win 2 out of the 4 50-50 games at best. That's going to give you a total of 4 wins, including those green games. But that's not going to be a good projection. The projection for Wisconsin is 4-8. So, yeah, not a great projection. It's definitely a lot lower compared to last year's projection at 7-5. And based off of that, based on the projected record, it really is based off of the schedule. Again, this is a tough schedule here for Wisconsin. It might be one of the toughest schedules in the Big Ten. Again, you got Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, 3 possible playoff contenders, and then you got Indiana and Illinois, pretty much dark horse contenders in the Big Ten. So, yeah, those are 5 games that really are going to be determining Wisconsin's season. And then Alabama in the non-conference makes this schedule a lot tougher as well. So, yeah, that's why the projection is 4-8 here for Wisconsin. I'm not saying they're going to be bad. It's just a tough schedule. I think best case scenario as of right now, 5-7, and then worst case, 3-9. But, yeah, 4-8 is the projection right now for Wisconsin. Do you guys agree or disagree? And let me know your thoughts about Wisconsin down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.